Hi, I'm Kimberly Lane.
I'm Sonia.
And I'm Jonathan Ward, and together we're unlocking leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and we provide key insights to address their challenge from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. So let's get to it. Our question today is from Earl in Dallas, Texas. Earl asks, the approach to changing decisions is different between my boss and me. I want to survey you coaches. How often do you change your mind when you're making a decision? Has that approach helped you be successful? Kimberly, how often do you change your mind when you make decisions?
Great question, Earl. And thank you for asking that. How often do I change my mind when making decisions? The really signs of a great leader, if you will, are really just the ability to make a decision and stick to it with determination and consistency and staying focused and bringing their team on board, right? And oftentimes characterized as a leader who has overcome great odds. But on the flip side of that, if a leader is doing that all the time, they also can be considered to be very stoically stubborn, inflexible, or insensitive of what's going around them, inflexible as far as a change and adaptability, right? So where's the nice blend? Because you don't want to be on the extreme of either or. You don't want to be so steadfast that you won't take anybody else's opinion or see anything that's coming along the way strategically that you might need to change your mind. Or you're always constantly changing your mind that your followers just like, well, let's just wait 5 more seconds because he or she's going to change their mind again. And it's not till the third time he changes their mind that we actually have our right direction, right? So you want to find something that's in between. With that being said, the other question is, what is wrong with somebody changing their mind, or what is wrong with someone having to stick to it on their decision, right? Is it the company's afraid, or you're afraid as the leader that you're going to make a wrong decision? Is there fear of isolating others, or is there a fear of not being assertive about your own ideas and you need to please others? So there's got to be some discovery in there, right? If it's a fear about making the wrong decision, when you make your decision, you want to stick to it as long as you have the factual wherewithal around that. And if you had to go back to that same circumstance with the same information you had that given time and make that decision, you would, and you can factually stand behind it and others can see that. Making a wrong decision is nothing wrong. It's just you were led to come to that conclusion or outcome, which you only learn from to grow, right? So is there the fear of making the wrong decision because of what it looks like externally, when really sometimes allowing people to make a decision, stick to it, and it might be wrong, but there's learning and growth in it, right? So it's kind of a very fluid issue, if you will. Um, uh, um, so just, yeah, where is that coming from? Is it an attitude of making the wrong decision, fear of being wrong? Or is it the attitude of trying to please others? That's why you're switching your decision. And that's not the right way. If you truly believe in what you have to say and the decision you're making, then you deserve to stick to what your decision is, irregardless of what the other people have to say. If it truly isn't going to move you forward in the decision you're trying to make. So I'm not saying be ignorant of other people. It's very important to collaborate and make decisions with other people. But whether you firmly believe you want to make a decision, but yet somebody kind of challenges you on it, but you're still steadfast in your decision, nothing wrong with that, right? It's your decision. You own it and be accountable for it. So I'm going to stop there and see what other coaches have to say along those lines.
All right, so I think I'll go with this. So I think of a couple of factors that go into making decisions. So one has to do with time, like how much time do I have for it? And is it something that in switching it is going to affect many things? And then the other one is how clear is my roadmap for whatever's going on ahead? So I'll share what I do. So if I've got a decision to make that involves others, involves use of resources, involves certain kinds of commitments, I will do a scenario planning exercise with myself because I want to be able to identify all the possible scenarios and what would my decision be like. And I want to be able to share that with the people that are going to be part of what's going on. So that if we get to Route X and suddenly more information gets revealed that shows that a different scenario is unfolding, then when we all change I change my mind, they recognize why, and they can be on board with that. On the other hand, there's the decisions of like, where we're going to go to dinner, or who's coming over, or that kind of thing. So when I make decisions about things like that, and I do it fast without enough information, there's a strong probability that I'll probably change it. Oh, I didn't know that restaurant was closed. I didn't know whatever. So here's sort of my answer. I'm an 80-20 kind of gal. So I would say 20% of the time I have made decisions very fast that I had to change. But 80% of the time, if somebody's going to collaborate with me, they'll know that I will have gone through a thoughtful process by which I will have shared with them my current map of the world and how it is that I see things unfolding. How about you, Jonathan?
Well, that's a great question. It's interesting. It made me think about conversations that I've had. I've written several books about NASA and the space program,
Oh, that's
and
right.
one of my favorites that I've talked a lot to is the Apollo 13 accident, where they had this explosion on the spaceship as it was on its way to the moon. And I know Fred Hayes, who was the lunar module pilot on the Apollo 13 capsule. He actually just wrote a book called Never Panic Early, which I think is a great thing. But
panic when you're supposed to. That's all. Yeah.
But in talking to it was really interesting talking to the people who were in mission control in Houston. How are you going to work through this? You've got this massive failure for something that's 200,000 miles away from Earth. The systems are failing all around you. You got 3 astronauts whose lives are in danger. What do you do? And the flight director told me, he said, the one thing you got to do is got to make sure that you never take an option off the table. You never make a decision that's going to take options off the table until the very last possible moment for doing that.
Wow, that's a great
So
advice.
he said, yeah, if you're going to take an option off the table, you got to make sure that you're never going to come back to that. So delay those kind of decisions as long as possible. Most of us are not dealing with life or death decisions most of the day. And going back to answer your question, how do I personally make decisions? I was thinking about personality types. There's the Myers-Briggs, there's the J's, the judgers, who like to make a decision as soon as possible and get it out of the way, and then I don't have to worry about it. There are the P's, who are like me, who like to leave things open until the last possible minute. That can be very frustrating if you're leading a team. And so what I learned to do when I was a manager was that if I had a decision that involved committing the people on my staff to doing some sort of work, I would make sure I had the information I needed to before I committed them to doing anything, that I felt absolutely that I was not going to be able to change my mind on that. And the 80-20 rule is right. You're never going to have perfect information. 80% of the time your gut's going to be right, and go with it, but make sure that you survey the people who are going to be affected by that decision before you do anything else about it. So I learned my gut instinct is just to put it off as long as possible, but there are other times, like planning a vacation, that I just like to go ahead and get things nailed down and then work around that. So my answer to your question is, it depends.
Right. And don't we sometimes just go into a decision knowing we're going to change a decision? I mean, there's a lot of times I know I don't have enough information, so I'm going to make a tentative plan now, and I know it's going to evolve and change as far as the day I leave, the flight I take, when I come back, where I go to dinner. But I put something kind of just to lay it out and start the planning. But I know I'm going to change my mind, right? Versus on the more critical things, I gather as much information as possible, do as much research, talk to as many people, and come to a firm decision that's taken many iterations to get there, right? So it's around then, at that point, I really want to be strong in my belief that I'm doing the right thing and it's the right decision, even when I get opposition, and able to appease that opposition by giving them factual reasons as far as why this decision has been made and why we're going in that direction. But I'm not so arrogant to believe that I'm always right? And there's opportunities there I always listen and evaluate whatever the opposition is saying, because I'm not saying I'm always right. And maybe they have a great idea, or maybe I didn't see that pathway, or I didn't see, I didn't know they're going to shut down power, tonight at 10 o'clock. Right. So yeah, it's a balance, right? It's a balance. It depends, right?
Well, and I think the other thing to think about is, in terms of people in your life that you're affecting, what age and what stage are they at? I remember somebody that I coached who had been on maternity leave and had her second child. And so her first child was almost 3 years old when the pandemic started. And then as things unfolded, she said, I wonder whether I should have given a little more context to my daughter, because now when she sees somebody without a mask, she goes into panic mode and she starts wondering what's wrong with them? Why don't they have a mask on? And so it really brought to bear that we all had to experience many different things in the last couple of years and shift because of either new information or new circumstances, is probably giving context to those that have not lived as long, that there are different, that this might be something that is happening now, but it could change, and that it's okay for it to change because probably we'll have more information. So it's that whole, I love your input about don't take that option off the table until the very last minute, is, I think, precious, because we should do that through all the decisions we're making, because we're living in so much uncertainty.
I was just thinking about one of the things that I kind of developed during the course of my life was to be able to by gut feel figure out, when my boss asked me to do something, how serious was this request. And there were some things that I would just, that I could tell that maybe this was not something that I needed to act on right away. That if I waited a little bit of time, if they asked me a second time, I would go ahead and do it. But yeah, sometimes I was just thinking about Queen Elizabeth, that, there was that line of hers in The Crown where she said, sometimes the hardest action is not taking any action. And sometimes that's what you have to do, is just kind of let things unfold a little bit longer before you make a decision about things.
So your approach, you would, and maybe this is something we should address that in another time in the future, and that is helping people create their intuition and grow that sixth sense, because it served you really well. It served you really, really
Or I got very lucky. I'm not sure which.
well. Well, you had to tune in to them well enough to
Yeah.
recognize
Yeah.
it, either in the tone of their voice or whatever it was.
Yeah. And I also, when I look back at decisions that I made that I thought well through to make the decision, and then it turns out it wasn't necessarily the right decision, but there was growth in that decision. I go back to think, if I had the same circumstances, the same gut feeling, everything information that I knew or didn't know, the people that I talked to, whatever, would I make the same decision again? And hindsight's always 20/20, right? I didn't have that other third piece of information until later on, when I figured out the decision was wrong. So, it's I don't want people to feel that there's only right decisions. Sometimes we make wrong decisions, and it's okay, right? And that's part of the growth, and that's part of the learning. But then also looking what you said, Jonathan, about making sure you leave all options on the table, and it's fluid enough to be able to change your direction and decision given additional information and pick a different option, right? So, and not be so steadfast in your way that you're ignorant to that. Okay, anything else to add?
Mhm.
All right, so thank you, Earl, for your question today. We hope you, our viewers and listeners, learned about our approach to changing decisions. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like this episode and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership -askthecoaches.com. We really look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would really love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us today, and tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.